From Hong Kong, this is the Mea Culpa podcast with lessons learned from startups, based upon the Postmodern Conference, where founders, investors, lawyers, and mentors share their stories about working on, with, or for startups. Today, we have Lloyed Lobo, a successful entrepreneur, but also successful in writing a book and successful in promoting a lot of other startups and ventures. He also started initiatives for networking, initiatives to raise funding and capital. He wrote a book last year. We will get into that later on a little bit too. Welcome, Lloyd.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting, and I'm eager to speak with you and dive all into entrepreneurship and lessons learned.
Yeah, because if I look a little bit in your background, right? You started out as a kind of like a business developer, salesperson, as an employee. Can you tell me a little bit how you from that came into like doing a startup?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'll go a little back. I'm actually an engineer. So, I went to university to study engineering. I have a bachelor's in software engineering. Now, when I graduated, I didn't want to work as an engineer. I was always like a rebellious kid in high school, university. I was always a little against the grain. And I admired entrepreneurs a lot and I wanted to get into business. And so when I graduated university, I didn't want to do a 9 to 5 job coding. This was like 2005, I think. And so I asked a bunch of people I knew who were business people. Back then, they wouldn't use the word entrepreneurship, startup. People, who were doing businesses. I asked them, "Hey, man, how do I become a business person like you?" And one of the things they said is, you need a key skill, and that is communication. You seem like an awkward engineer. You need to improve the way you communicate. And I thought to myself back then that, man, how do I improve my communication skills? And I started to think that, you know what, I'm not a very self motivated individual. Most people are not self motivated, right? Self motivated is not, I show up to the gym when the conditions are perfect and I'm living on the beach and I have no worries, right? Self motivation is, can I show up when I'm repeatedly punched in the face? And I thought to myself that if I took a public speaking class to improve my communication and two, three people laughed at me when I went on stage, I would never do that class again, right? So I said, how do I improve my communication now? And so I said, you know what? Let me look at all the jobs I can apply to that requires me to communicate day in, day out. And as I researched and talked to people, it was sales. It's like sales is the only job that forces you to communicate day in, day out. Now, as an awkward engineer, when I started applying to sales jobs, nobody would give me a job. They're like, why do you want to switch your careers? But there was one desperate entrepreneur, founder, startup founder for telecom startup. He needed cold callers. He's like, whatever. So he hired me as a cold caller. Now, the first cold call I ever made, I practiced 3 or 4 hours. And as soon as I started picking up the phone and dialing, and when the decision maker on the other side picked up the phone, I hung up. But I was, everyone's like, the other cold callers around me like laughing because I practiced so much, right? But then what happens is I took a job in cold calling. I needed to do that. And so, my environment around me were all cold callers and we were just helping each other, and I was showing up day in, day out, calling, and my communication got better. Now, fast forward a year, my girlfriend back then, wife now, was in medical school in New Jersey, and so it was inevitable I had to move to New Jersey. And so I started applying to sales jobs in New Jersey, and again, no big company would give me a job because one, I'm an engineer with 1 year of cold calling experience. And so as I was applying and applying, the only person who gave me a job was another startup founder, right? Like no big company would give like an engineer with 1 year cold calling experience a sales job. And so that was great. When I joined that company, though, and this was 2006, when I joined that company, I realized very quickly it wasn't a sales job. Now I felt like, oh, I upgraded from cold calling, right? From cold calling, now I have to actually sell. And they had very large customers like Tiffany, Armani, Simon and Schuster. And I said, wow, I'd get the opportunity to sell to them. But when I actually started the job there, I realized they don't have a repeatable, scalable product or a sales process. So I had to meet with customers and figure out their pain points and write it down. And then I needed to translate it into wireframes and product requirements for the dev team to build. And oh, by the way, they didn't have a marketing website or any sales collateral. So I had to do all that too. And I'm like thinking to myself, what did I get myself into? Now, most kids who were put into that situation would likely quit. The thing is, I didn't have the option to quit because, I went to university in Canada. My first job was in Canada, so I was in the US on a visa. And so I had to stick with it. And I'm like, you know what? I'll stick with it. My desire to be with my girlfriend is a lot more than the pain over here at the job. But what I realized very quickly, Jeffrey, is what does a startup founder do? You validate the market, talk to customers, figure out what to build, then translate the requirements to your dev team, and then get feedback from the customers. And you design the marketing and the sales. That's what you do in the early days as a founder, right? And so that was great experience for me. I did that for a couple of years. And then my next job ended up being head of sales and marketing at another startup. So, if you notice, the key theme here is because my first job was with a startup founder, working directly with the startup founder, my next job also ended up being that. And the next job also ended up being that. And in my last job, as we I was going through it, my best friend in university, Alex Popa, he had the idea for Boast AI. And he called me and said, hey, you know what? Do you want to do a startup together? I jumped at the opportunity because he's my best friend and I wanted to work with him. But one a very important thing that made it easy for me to jump into startups is because, like they say, when you're a child, you're naive. You don't know what's going on. I had never worked for a big company, right? I had only worked for startups alongside startup founders. I didn't know the world outside of risk. So I jumped at the opportunity to take the risk. I'm like, hey, you know what? What's better than working on an unknown thing with people you don't know? Better to do the same and take a risk with your friend. At least, you'll enjoy working together because you guys are friends since university. And so I jumped at the opportunity, right? Like, I'm like, anyway. And what's really funny is all these three startups that raised money, they had failed eventually. And so I'm like, why work in a stressful environment, dealing with ambiguous situation, doing a startup with people you don't know? So I jumped at the opportunity, work with him. And around the same time, we moved from New Jersey to California because my wife got fellowship at Stanford. And that was the journey. But, if I had to summarize lessons from this quick journey for aspiring entrepreneurs out there, there's four things you need to be successful, right? In anything you do. Number one, your community, your companions matter the most. This is the 4 C's I tell people, right? If you want to get fit, hang out with 5 fit people. I guarantee you in 6-7 months, you'll be the sixth, fit person. You want to be an entrepreneur? Hang out with 5-6 entrepreneurs every freaking day. You'll be the sixth entrepreneur. And so that was me, right? Because I joined one startup, then I joined another startup and another startup. And so the largest company I ever worked for is actually my company, Boast, right? Before that, they were all smaller startups. And so you become the average of the people you surround yourself with. Your companions matter the most. Who you surround yourself with can make you feel like a peasant or a rock star. So it's important that you curate your companions very wisely. The second thing is, one of the most important skills to have is communication. Everything from convincing your spouse that I'm not going to bring money home, to convincing customers that, hey, I don't have a product, but please believe in me and buy my stuff, to convincing investors, to convincing employees that, hey, work on low pay, is all communication. It's a version of sales. What is sales? It's communication. And the job of a leader is to build, inspire, and motivate a team to deliver. Deliver is the lagging indicator. But how do you build, inspire, and motivate a team? Through communication, constantly communicating the vision to inspire and motivate them. And it's not a day in, day out. It's not a one and done activity. It's something that you got to do day in, day out. And so Communication is key. If you can't communicate, you don't have an audience, you have an empty room. That's the second C. The third C is your ability to create. And to brace yourself for entrepreneurship, learn to create something. And if you're in high school, maybe like start creating. Maybe it's art, maybe it's music, maybe it's content. You're always creating, right? As an entrepreneur, whether you're creating software or in the early days, all your learnings you're turning into playbooks. So you're creating playbooks, or you're as an artist creating art or music. Maybe it's a project in your backyard. Just create, learn to create, develop the muscle to create. The younger you are, keep creating, creating, creating. And the last C, or rather the fourth C is commerce. Learn about money, everything you can, because building a business is not about love and fresh air. You exist to serve customers, and customers pay you for the value you deliver them. So learn about commerce, learn about how to make money, how money works, profitability, because ultimately you can raise a lot of VC money, like happened in the last 2-3 years, at a high valuation. But then when the markets correct themselves or reality sinks in, if you're not making money, you're not generating a profit, you can't be in business for long. So learn everything you can about how to make money, commerce. And the fifth C, without this, you have nothing. You may have all the knowledge about commerce and all the knowledge about creation, and you may be the best communicator and have a world-class network and community, a network of companions. You may know the who's who. But the fifth C is consistency. Without consistency, you have nothing. Everyone from Warren Buffett to Mr. Beast to Gary Vaynerchuk, the greatest of the greatest, they never stop, right? If you look at Mr. Beast's old videos, they sucked. But now they're so polished. Or same with Gary Vaynerchuk. Or who's the single richest person in B2B SaaS? Larry Ellison. He never sold a single share. So the greatest of the greatest never stop. Consistency is the secret ingredient that turns small actions into big outcomes. We often tell, oh, this person is an overnight success or they got lucky. It's just you didn't notice that when they sucked, they kept showing up day in, day out. And then one day they got lucky or became an overnight success. So to summarize that, it's your companions, your communication, creation, commerce, and consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, let me unpack that a little bit, right? Especially in the beginning, you said that you were doing things like going to clients, hear about their requirements, then go to development, right? And then have that developed and validate those kind of things. I always call that managing expectations, right? Technical people can build something, but you cannot sell it. Or salespeople can sell something, but technically not viable to make, right? And on that bridge, technically also that's where most of my working experience is. Looking on the left hand side, technical, on the right hand side, commercial or commerce, as you call that, and then on the other side, indeed, like that, building that bridge between those two. But you were working for a startup, or at least you were hired by a founder. You were working for a startup, but at one point, yeah, you said I had a friend that wanted to do a startup with me. Then the question is a friend that you go to with, like in high school and have beers and like have fun, is that the right business partner?
It's not. So I'll tell you what the right co-founder is. So let me describe what mine and Alex's relationship was. Alex is a very solid operations person, and he's a very solid technical mind. And since university, we were partners in every single project, right? We did our undergraduate thesis together, which was collision avoidance on real-time vehicles, which is algorithms for self-driving car way back when, right? And so he was the person developing it. I was the person, in charge of writing the thesis and presenting it. So we were always this combo of, he is a good technical mind, I was a good sort of front person. So we had this good camaraderie through university. We were partners in every project. We were in every class together. So we weren't drinking buddies. I think what a lot of young founders make a mistake on is when they try to find a co-founder, They go and partner with their drinking buddy or family members. Don't do that. One of the most important things when you're starting a company, it's a lonely job, man. It's a long slog. You might get lucky, but don't think I'm going to get lucky and sell like Instagram in like 1, 2 years. Building anything great is a long slog. It's a marathon of the heart and mind. And it's not technology that'll get you there, it's people. You need to surround yourself with the right people. And one of them is having a solid co founder. Or you may have the will and the stomach and the guts to power through alone, but it gets very lonely. Imagine bills come due, you can't, you lose customers, your product sucks. Who do you have to talk to? You need a co founder. Like your co founder ends up being not only your co founder, but in a way, a therapist and your partner in crime, right? And so you can discuss issues, solve them together, fill each other's gaps, essentially fill each other's cups here, right? And it becomes a very fulfilling journey. So one of the key things you need is, do we fill each other's gaps? What is my zone of genius? So if I'm great in sales, that's my zone of genius. I'm going to focus on selling and talking to customers and getting it out there. What am I missing? You don't want to do everything. So what is my gap? My gap is maybe the technical side of things and the operation side of things. So find somebody who fills your gap. The second thing is alignment of values. If two people don't align on values going in, it'll never work out. See, when you're poor and you're making no money as a startup, it's very, very easy to ignore values. It seems fluffy, but you're trying to survive. There's no money. You're trying to make ends meet. So you ignore these things. But as soon as money comes in, money doesn't change people. It just brings out their true intentions out. When money comes in, then you start to think like, oh, this is more important for me, or that other thing is more important for me. So one thing is, if two founders dislike each other, or there's some innate rivalry, like I don't respect you as a skilled engineer or operations person, and you think I'm not a good salesperson or I'm just exaggerating all the time, then it's never going to work. When we're poor and we're trying to make ends meet, we'll just shut up with all the comments, right? We'll just bite our tongue. But as soon as money comes in, the hate will bubble up. So I think alignment on values is very important. It's very important to write down what's important to you personally and what's important to your co-founder and find alignment there. So for example, if I care about transparency and I care about impact, but my co-founder doesn't care about transparency and wants to tell people everything on a need to know basis and only cares about making money, then things are going to fall apart, right? Because what's going to happen is when the company scales, I'm going to be very transparent, and anyone who talks to me, I'll just tell them. And then the word will get to your co-founder and is like, why did you tell them? Like, why do they need to know, right? Or I heard you talk to such and such person and they said you said this. Why did you say this? Right? And so you need to write your values down to begin with. Like, no, we're transparent, meaning this is the value. These are the scenarios and behaviors and actions these values create. You need to write them down and align on them. Or it's like, I care about impact, so I'll do a bunch of free stuff because I know I'll create impact, and the karma or the good word of mouth from that impact, the brownie points will come back. But they'll be like, why are you doing this for free? We need to optimize for money. Then you start frictioning. So it's very, very important when you're going in to write down values and what you care about and align on them, right? So fill each other's gaps and make sure there's value alignments. Top two things in deciding your co-founder.
You say you're writing them down, but do you also at that point put them in kind of like a document and agree upon with your co-founder, basically signing it, like saying, these are our values, this is what we stick to? Or like, how do you arrange it?
Exactly. Like you write it down, like you codify it like in a document, and you put it on the wall, because when you're two people and you're working together, it's there. And then what happens is, maybe now you want friction, right? And these are things that you have healthy debate on in the early days, right? Well, what are you doing in the early days? You're talking to customers and figuring out what to build, right? You're trying to validate the market. Validate if you guys are suited to work with each other. So you say, hey, these are the values. I care about transparency. So that means as we scale, if we become a 100% company, if anyone asks me for anything, I'll just tell them, right? Um, I don't need permission. That's what a transparent culture is. Are you fine with that? You know, um, okay, I agree, right? And let it through, right? Um, I deeply care about creating an impact. That's why I'm doing this business. So that means we will, if a customer complains about a few things, I may give a discount within a range. I may offer to do some free things or maybe to help some customers who can't afford it, but they really need the service. I may just do it pro bono. Is that okay with you? Right? And they may say, no, you know what? I deeply care about money. Nothing should be free. We shouldn't do anything for free. And they're like, okay, why is this a debate? Right? And there may be other things, like it could be, for example, it could be, I love freedom. And somebody says, no, I love control. Or somebody says, I love to want everyone to work in the office. And the other person says, no, I want everything to be remote. Then when you know these things and you have a healthy discussion on it, saying, this is the value I deeply care about. What are the values you care about? One word. What are the scenarios these values could lead to? Let's discuss some scenarios. And if they're uncomfortable, be like, no, I don't want to ever deal with this. Like, I want everyone to come in the office. And you're like, no, I don't want to ever come in the office. So then you say, okay, can we do hybrid? And if they say, no, there's no way I'm going to agree to hybrid. And you know yourself, you hate going into the office. So going in the office 5 days a week is not going to work for you. You'll compromise on a hybrid, maybe 3 days, 2 days in the office, 3 days online. But if they say no, no, then you're like, man, we can't work together. So it's very important to, not just like a lot of people just write down the word values down, like, oh, transparency, teamwork, winning, all these things. You gotta actually have a discussion on what that actually means by discussing the scenarios, right? Throw actual scenarios. What does winning actually mean? Winning above all. That means you will murder somebody to win? So it's very important to put those scenarios down. If winning above all is a value, and then your salespeople are lying to customers
to win,
right? And so you got to define that. So maybe winning above all is not a value, but maybe it's winning just not at the cost of the customer. Winning without doing harm,
harm.
right? Exactly. So I think it's important to write the values and then discuss the scenarios that come about, because that'll just help your relationship get a lot better. Or you decide that, hey, I just don't want to work with this person.
Mm-hmm. From that perspective, because you found your co-founder, right? But you already told earlier that you moved to San Francisco because of say the work of your wife, but that also means that she has to support you as an entrepreneur, as like being able to handle you, because as I quite often say, if you're fighting out a war in the office every single day, you don't want to come home and fight another battle, right? So how is her opinion about you being an entrepreneur at that point?
My wife is the most important person in my life. She's been the most supportive person to me. Um, we didn't move to, I said, yeah, we moved to San Francisco because she got a job at Stanford. She got a fellowship there. But actually, she didn't want to move from New Jersey. Her whole family was on the East Coast in New Jersey. The thing is, there's no startup ecosystem at the time. And, like they say, if you want to act in movies, you go to Hollywood. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you go to Silicon Valley. I really desperately wanted to go to Silicon Valley and be a part of the tech ecosystem. And she just didn't want to and didn't want to and didn't want to. And I begged her and begged her. We had many arguments. She's like, we're leaving our family. And so she said, you know what? I'm going to apply to one university. If I get in, we're in. And they don't take a lot of people from outside. Luck would have it, my life has been a series of lucks, as they say. She got into Stanford as a fellowship, and, we've been there for now, nearly 15 years. And it was a good path for me. We moved to San Francisco, like I started with, right? If you hang out with 5 entrepreneurs, you'll be the sixth one. You hang out with 5 fit people, you'll be the sixth one. Your companions, your environment, your surroundings matter the most. And so being around entrepreneurs and being in that circle helped me a big deal in terms of connections and network and community and things I needed to get done, and even inspiration to just go and move, right? Like everyone's go get it, let's do it mentality. Everyone is proactive. Everything is about high velocity. And so that helped me personally and professionally immensely being in Silicon Valley. But nonetheless, I made no money for nearly 8-9 years, right? And whenever we made money in the last few years of Boast, um, it wasn't very significant. Only in the towards the end of 2020, we sold 52% of the company to a growth equity firm, and out of nowhere, I went from having no money to being, a millionaire. But nonetheless, prior to that, she supported us, and then in the last couple of years before the exit, we started to make decent money. But in the early days, no money. Then eventually, I think a few years in, started consistently taking 4 or 5K a month, right? And then that grew over time. And last couple of years end up being actually really good. But that's the journey, right? You need a very supportive partner. Who you're with. I keep saying this. Your companions, your environment matters the most. If your partner, your wife, your spouse is not bought into your entrepreneurial journey, it will never work, or you'll end up in a divorce. And she was very supportive. My wife's an ER physician and professor, and she knew that we're going to be busy. And so she said, you know what, we got to invest in a nanny. Forget vacations, forget cars, forget spending money on fancy things. Let's get a nanny. And nannies are expensive in Silicon Valley. But she's like, think about it. If we don't have a nanny, one of us is going to have to stay at home. So I can't leave my job because I need to support the family. And you have this entrepreneurial dream. So how are we going to do it? So you need a very, very supportive partner to make suggestions and take actions like that. And I'm thankful, man. All my life, I can tell you, is a series of luck. Really.
Okay. All right. Uh, we talked a little bit about the beginning, right? But how did you prepare yourself to become a founder? Because you were working for some startups. I guess that didn't pay like a significant amount of money, so there were probably not a lot of life savings at that point. How did you prepare yourself? Did you give yourself like a certain amount of period of time, like within X amount of months, I have to realize this, or I have, say, 10,000 US dollars, and when that's gone, I have to find a job at Google or Apple? Or how did you sell? How did you prepare yourself for it?
Constraints lead to creativity. Necessity is the mother of all inventions. Okay. We didn't raise any money at Boast. I've been a part of venture backed companies prior to that, companies that raise millions of dollars. And raising venture money doesn't mean you're going to be successful. More companies die of indigestion than starvation. If money would fix you or could fix you or make you successful, then all the unicorns that raised money in the last 2 3 years wouldn't be that 1,000 unicorns in the last 2 years. It's mostly a graveyard now. It wouldn't be that case, right? Money doesn't buy growth. Money doesn't create vision. Vision creates money. And so one of the first things we did was we said we need to get paying customers. You have an idea. So startups are built in phases, right? Phase one is validation. What is validation? I have an idea. I need to make sure who the ideal customer profile is. Does the message resonate or not? Right? So your goal with validation phase is figuring out who the ideal customer profile is, where they eat, breathe, drink, sleep, who is their circle of influence, and does your message resonate? And so those are the leading indicators. Like, are people having conversations with me? Is my message resonating, etc.? And the goal is, can I get 5 10 customers to pay me to try it out, especially in a B2B startup, right? So that's what we did. We got customers to buy us and pay us. Next phase is product market fit. Product market fit when you're a bootstrap company is not NPS and all these other things. They put their faith in us and paid us to try it out. Now, will they stick with us? If they leave, You can't eat, right? As a bootstrap company. So you want to optimize for high retention, no churn. The phase after that is product channel fit or go to market fit. Is there one repeatable, scalable way to acquire customers? Okay. That could mean sales, that could mean community, that could mean ads, whatever it is. Do you have one way or two ways to get customers? If you don't have a repeatable, scalable way to get customers and you're sprinkling money in 100 places and nothing is working or it's mediocre, you'll eventually fail, right? And so now by go to market fit, you've got one kind of customer coming to you for one kind of product that they love and they keep using and they don't churn through one channel. Now you're at a point of scale. At scale, what you do, your job changes as a founder, right? At validation, you may say founder, you may say president, you may have all kinds of titles, but you're an individual contributor. You're not a C-suite. At product market fit, maybe you hired one, two people because initially you were doing all the sales or product yourself. Now you hire one, two people. You go from being a founder now, from an individual contributor founder to a manager. You're managing two people. At go to market fit, you've hired a manager to manage the people you are managing, and you become a VP. You're still very tactically involved. Like, don't abstract so far from the business that you don't know what's going on in the business. You still need to be very tactical. Now at scale, you figure out, hey, I have one kind of customer who comes to my product for one kind of value and pays me and doesn't leave, and they're coming through one repeatable, scalable channel. So now the business is mostly coin operated, and you can put people to run that side of the business. And basically it's like pour fuel on the fire. More of the same kind of customer, add more features, make the product better, and pour more fuel on the channel that's working. And now 25% of the time, this is where at scale a founder goes from an individual contributor to a manager to a VP to now you're actually a C-suite. And as a C-suite founder at scale, you're a strategist. And what is strategy at scale? 25% of the time, the company's energy, and you're not distracting the whole company on these crazy projects. You have a small skunkworks team and you're saying, you know what, I'm going to figure out a new product. Maybe I'll figure out a new geography. Maybe I'll figure out a new marketing channel. Maybe I'll figure out a whole new ideal customer profile. You're trying to do that in a very methodical way, again, through validation, product market fit, and product channel fit. And so I think the best way to brace yourself, I actually advocate for bootstrapping in the early days and time blocking everything. Can you validate an idea within 6 months? Can you get it to product market fit within 12 to 18 months? Can you pre-sell the thing? Learn to sell it. Learn to sell stuff before you build it. And so that's what kept us afloat, is we kept getting customers. My wife was doing the heavy lifting with the bills. Whatever little money we made as we hired people, we paid payroll, but little scraps and pieces we were paid. When I left the job, actually I had unemployment for the first, I think, year or so. So that was nothing. It's like $2,500 USD or something, but nonetheless, it was something. And then over time, it scaled, where I was taking like 3 to 5K a month from Boast, and then eventually it got much better, and then we had the exit. But nonetheless, as you know, constraints lead to creativity. Sometimes I'll give you lots of money and you can't figure it out, and that's why some startups kill it compared to Teams and Google.
Mm-hmm. That's correct indeed. You built Boost. Was your co-founder a companion for you up until now, or were there any changes throughout the history of Boost?
No, we were two co-founders till now. Now we're both active board members. I'm his daughter's godfather. He's my daughter's godfather. He briefly moved to Dubai. We were neighbors. In the last year and a half, I moved to Dubai and I split my time between Dubai and SF. Right, in the summers, I'm back in SF. Rest of the year in Dubai. So I think he spent a year here with me and my family and his family in Dubai. So we're very close. Right, we not only did Boast, we did another product together called Automatically, which was a chatbot built on top of Zendesk. We did this in 2013. Nobody knew what chatbot was. Maybe if we stuck with it, it would have been something huge, right? But We didn't have the foresight. And, of course, there's ChatGPT and there's Intercom and all these things today. But yeah, so we did that in 2013. We also run this big community called Traction Together. It's a community for entrepreneurs, 110 plus thousand subscribers. We host podcasts every other week, and we do a big conference. We do dinners and meetups in different cities. But it started as an in-person community where we'd host weekly meetups, and then it transitioned to being a conference, annual conference. And the digital came much, much after, like after the pandemic, around the pandemic kind of thing. So yeah, so we've been, strong on across fronts. We've had our shares of ups and downs. But here's the thing, man. What you need to realize is the bird in hand is always worth two in the bush. It's better the relationship you have is better maintaining the relationship you have, especially when someone's been with you through the ups and downs and the thick and thin, than walking away and saying, I'm going to find somebody new, because you don't know what that person is going to turn out to be, right? A lot of people I know, friends I know, through the hardships, they stuck with their wife, and then they divorce and they go with this young broad they find, and then what happens? It doesn't work out, right? It's very important to appreciate what you have. The glass is always half full. You can achieve anything in life if you have one person by your side that not only says, man, don't worry about it, it's going to be okay, I believe in you, you can do it, but also says, you know what, if you struggle, I'm always here to help you. That is very important. And there's three people in my life that's been that for me. My wife, of course, Alex, my co-founder, and my mom.
Okay. All right. That's as you said, right? Community, right? The people around you have to be supportive, like what I said earlier, right? They have to be supportive, because otherwise that's not going to work for you, because you're already fighting a war every single day at your company to get to that product market fit, to get to that go to market fit, to get to the elements that you need to definitely grow your business. Now that you've done both and you did another project, what's next for you?
For the last 10 years, I neglected my family and my health. And, you can go to my Instagram, Lloyed Lobo. I've taken a LinkedIn sabbatical after the book became a bestseller. You go to my Instagram, Lloyed Lobo, and you'll see I pinned a post, what I look like as an entrepreneur and what I look right now physically. Right, night and day shift. I was overweight, drunk, obese kind of thing. And now I'm like 10-11% body fat, fit. My journey is all fitness. So the reason why a big reason why I left the day-to-day of the business is, one, of course, to make room for, when you're a founder, you're a pirate. Eventually you need the Navy, right? And so transitioning from pirate to Navy. But one of the big reasons I made this move was my daughter was 8 a couple years ago when she told this to me, and I left. She said, Dad, why don't you get a job and work somewhere? At least I'll see you. Don't do this entrepreneur thing, right? And prior to that, what happened was, after we sold after we sold 52% of the business, before I left the day-to-day, I actually was hospitalized with COVID pneumonia and almost died. And life lost its meaning for me. See, here I am all my life, I had no money. I'm chasing. Luck happens. I win the lottery. And a week or so later, I'm hospitalized, thinking to myself, what have I done? If I die today, my kids won't even remember me. I don't have a relationship with them. I have 3 kids now. I barely spent the last 10, 12 years of this journey with my family, my wife. She's done so much for me. And I sank, man. It caused me to get depressed and think deeply about life and what's important. A lot of the times we focus on moving targets and just chasing. Founders innately are not balanced. We're extreme. And so I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical, spend time with the family, focus on health. and fitness, and something will come out of it. Um, in the spare time, I also wrote a book, From Grassroots to Greatness, which is 13 rules to build iconic brands with community-led growth. And this book chronicles the journey of small, unknown companies that eventually became big, iconic brands like the Apples and the Harleys, and how they did it by leveraging the power of people. The key theme being every obscure idea that eventually became an enduring global phenomenon. I'm not talking about the tech companies, I'm talking about companies in general. Small, obscure ideas from Christ and Christianity to CrossFit that went from being unknown to iconic, went through the exact same 4 stages. People listen to you or buy your product, you have an audience. When you bring that audience together to interact with one another, it becomes a community when they're coming together to interact with one another on a cadence. Now, here's the kicker. When the community comes together to create impact towards a purpose that's far greater than your profit or your product, it becomes a movement. And the last one is when that movement has undying faith in its purpose through sustained rituals over time, it becomes a cult or a religion, audience, community, movement, religion. So I unpack that in the book, and it was a personally very important book for me to write for a variety of reasons. One, because my whole life has been supported by various communities. I was a refugee of the Gulf War. My childhood summers were spent in the slums of Mumbai. We bootstrapped Boast with no investor money to 10 million by building this community. And so it was very important for me to share that and get it out in the world. So I did that, and then I took a break. I haven't written on LinkedIn in 4 or 5 months. And so I don't know what's next, but I've been spending a lot of time on health and fitness and wellness. And maybe the next thing I do would most likely be with my wife in the space of functional longevity and holistic wellness. I don't know, but I'm loving that. For me, I think what's really important is doing things that create impact. At Boast, we help businesses get money for R&D. Our vision, our mission, our purpose at Boast rather was to enable innovators to change the world. Every dollar spent in innovation returns 20 to the economy. Vaccines, robots, clean drinking water is a function of innovation. Yet 99% of the innovations die on the vine. Why? Because they either don't have the money or they don't have the know-how. And through our R&D funding products, we were bringing people money to accelerate their innovation. We've given, I think, in the last year, like $450 million. And then because we have this unique data set, because to disperse this money, we collect people's technical data and their financial data, the technical R&D data and their financial, like bookkeeping, accounting, payroll data. Now we can actually break the black box of R&D, because it's always like R&D does something. How does it create a business impact? So now, because we can stitch the finance side of the business with the technical side of the business, we can say, hey, who you should hire, what projects you should invest in, what you shouldn't, etc. And so our next line of products will be in the R&D analytics space. And so that was a good mission, right? Enabling innovators to change the world by accelerating innovation. And so I want to work on something that has a deeper purpose like that. And I think I can get behind functional longevity, democratizing functional longevity and holistic wellness. Right? People in their 60s are not functional for the most, right? There's a lot of mental health issues and physical health issues because of how we work, how we live, how we eat. And it would be an interesting problem to solve. I have no solution for that yet, but if there's another big impact idea I'd like to work on, it would be that.
Okay, understand that. By the way, we will put a link to the book and to your Instagram in the show notes of this podcast. So if there is one thing that you want the audience to take away from this talk, like what would that be? Like what was the most important thing you want to drive home?
The most important thing I want to drive home is those 5 C's that I said, and focus on maybe the first C is curate your companions wisely. Your well-being depends on it. What you put in your mind is what you become. You think negative, you attract negative. Surround yourself with the right people for your journey, and you will see success follow. If you belabor on the negative, you will keep attracting the negative. So your companions matter the most.
Okay. And what is one thing that's not a secret, but most people don't know about you?
Ooh, what is one thing that is not a secret but people don't know about me? I don't know. People don't know I live in Dubai probably right now. And I think why I moved to Dubai is again to curate a new environment, right? It's on the beach. The water does something to my brains. It calms the feeling of stress. And a lot of people are fit here, and it's a safe place. And so that's why I came here. Dubai is like Miami meets Vegas meets Singapore on steroids. And so that's why I came here. A lot of fit people in the community, in the environment. Like you go to a gym here, for every person that's training, there's a personal trainer. I haven't seen per capita that many fit people. So that's why I came to Dubai and explore a new way of um, life and business. And I think in the West we live to work, right? Everything is centered around your work. You live, you commute to work, you come back from work, you take emails, and because of that, your health goes to crap because on the way you're eating whatever quickly you can put in your body, processed food. And you live like that till you're 65, between sales tax, income tax, property tax, federal state taxes. You lose more than 50-60% of your income. And then after 65, when you've not focused on your health, you retire and you're like, I'm getting some pension, but I can barely move. So you go from now the tax system to the hospital system. So I just wanted to be in a place where people think about work and life very differently, where people work to live, not live to work. I think balance is important. And one more piece of advice I do want to share: before you start a company, make sure you ask yourself these questions. I think I never asked, and it took a realization for me, like almost dying from COVID, to figure out what's really important. But number one is, what is my personal definition of success? It's never money. There's no point of money if money doesn't, like, you can't use the money to bring you the things that give you joy, right? And it's freedom. The number one thing is more time in your day, right? It's not like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and whatnot. That novelty wears off in weeks. Who cares if you have a Lamborghini, but you got to commute 2 hours every day? You're a slave. Who cares if you have a big fancy house, but you're working 80 hours a week, right? And you're making all your meals and everything. Use money to create leverage and free time for you, right? That's what I view it as. But it could be anything. Ask yourself, what is my personal definition of success? Meaning, what do I want to do when I have the money that will make me fulfilled? Number two, how much money do you need in your bank account to make that happen? Is there a version of this company that I'm building that I don't want to work for? There may be some value that you're not aligned with. And the last one is, how long do I want to keep running this company? A lot of us have moving targets, right? You get to 1 and then you want to get to 5 and then you want to get to 10 and you want to get to 50, because there's so much comparison out there. Comparison is the thief of joy. Make sure you take care of yourself through the process. You put the time to fuel yourself with the right sources, both like what you eat and what you consume in your mind and who you hang out with, right? Because ultimately you're the protagonist of your journey, and if you don't take care of yourself, you'll eventually burn out and be of no good to your business or your family.
Thank you very much for these valuable insights. Thank you for sharing your lessons learned in startups. For the listeners, although the rating system of podcast is hideous, if you like this Mea Culpa series, you can rate this startup podcast with the 5 stars as a motivation to the makers. I want to thank Copy Ventures for making this series possible. If you have any suggestions on people that we should talk to about their lessons learned in startups, feel free to reach out. Contact details are in the show notes. Thank you, Lloyd, for doing this and taking your time out of your day for recording this.
Thank you so much for having me, man. You're a wonderful host. I appreciate your questions, and I look forward to sharing this one live.
Thank you very much again. This is Jeffrey Brewer. Go out and build something meaningful.
Awesome. Love and peace.